There are some crazy crafting mistakes that you could be making in Path of Exile 2, Dawn of the Hunt. Some of the new stuff like recombining gear to build out insane new pieces of armor can literally get you some insane build defining gear, but can also completely bankrupt you if you do it wrong. Also, even basics just from crafting your regular gear or even crafting specific unique pieces can go wrong pretty quickly and can be kind of ruined if you rush through it and make the wrong choice. With that, even though crafting is still pretty much a gamble, but with all the different crafting options, I'm going to go through everything you need to know so you can understand all this stuff and you'll never have a question about it again. So first I want to talk about the Recombinator because it's one of the newest things introduced in Dawn of the Hunt, and if you don't know how it works, it can be a little confusing. So the basics, if you've never used the Recombinator, ideally once you get on your map device, by completing your first expedition, I believe you can essentially talk to Danig. He has a quest that once completed allows you to place the Recombinator. If you've already played and you already have a map layout for your hideout, you may actually have to come in here and click edit and then go into decorations and then go into utility to find that your Recombinator is actually right here. So if you already have a map layout previously, you won't have a Recombinator in it if you've done a custom layout. You have to go in here within your hideout, find the Recombinator and throw it in your already existing hideout for it to actually show up. I played like a week without it even existing on my map. So that's the first step. The second step is how to use the Recombinator efficiently. Now, there's a couple key things to note here. The first thing is what you can do is you can target specific base items. For instance, if we like the ornate plate, right? We like the passive where it regenerates a certain % of our max life per second. You can make sure that you build a piece with that fixed passive already on it if you actually combine two of the exact same pieces, meaning two ornate plates. And you can see here, if we have an ornate plate that's actually magic, and then we have one up here that's a rare. You can combine a magic with a rare with a rare. Either way, it still works, and you can basically guarantee yourself a fixed prefix here. That way, this item will for sure be an ornate plate if it does succeed. So that's one thing to keep in mind, especially if you need a certain base. Now, one thing you can't do is obviously try and do this with, let's say, a ring. It has to be the same base type, meaning it has to be a chest piece. You can see if we stick with the ornate plate, but then even drop in, let's say, this Rambler jacket, right? We can still put this in there even though it has dramatically different requirements. And again, this works the same way into the base item type. If you select two base item types, you basically then will get a random base, right? That chance is up to you if you want to take it. I would recommend personally, probably just not doing that. Now I'll show you how this works with two items that are the same. So it essentially requires 20 order artifacts. This is why boosting maps for expedition, if you want to use this mechanic, again, you can see the modifier of the tier on each piece right over here, or if you hold Alt on your gear, that way you can see the tier of affix that it is to see how good it is. Since it costs 20 order artifacts, eventually you'll have to have enough of them because some of your items can fail and be completely destroyed based on how many of these affixes, A, that you select, and B, the rarity of the affixes themselves. For instance, if we click this maximum life and armor, for instance, we have a 100% chance for success. One of the big reasons for this is the armor is a mid-tier range and the maximum life is a lower tier roll. You can see obviously it's not that much max life. Now, if we actually swap these, even though they're a little bit different resistances, we'll just go for the stun threshold and then we select this max life over here. You can see our chance is now a 26.55% chance. That's because our tier of max life roll in this piece of gear combined with the tier of this is a much higher tier roll than our maximum life and our armor on this piece, which means since it's a lot higher tiers that we're combining into one piece of gear, it's going to be rare and it's going to be harder for it to succeed, obviously, because it would be super, super powerful if we got everything we wanted on there. So again, let's say we wanted the armor. Now it goes to 13.27%, but let's say we also just wanted the fire resistance. That means we have a 12.4% chance. This is where it's important. You can find and collect these base items if you find them, or the wider magic version of the item, and just keep them in a stash tab somewhere for when you're ready to combine, and you can roll enough of them that you can basically build a set that will get you your amazing piece of gear. Again, selecting a fourth attribute puts us at a 0.88% chance. Probably never going to hit that, probably not even ever worth trying. So ideally you're recombinating to get a solid base, and then you can go from there. Again, your chance to succeed goes based off the rarity of the modifiers and how many modifiers are selected. We take our max life and our fire resistance here. Keep in mind now we're at a 25% chance. We'll just say we're going to recombinate these two. Let's go ahead and recombinate those. And you can see we actually succeeded and got this piece right here that's now a very, very solid base overall piece. You can see the passive affix for the ornate plate is still there, and we have both affixes on our chest. Now we can continue to re-roll this piece. Again, that will let us actually roll this now and get some possibly much better rolls. If you notice, this is still a rare, even though it has 2 affixes, meaning that we actually have to use exalts on it to continue to level it. But then we can use an exalt, level it up, and boom, we got 20 strength. Again, we'll throw another exalted orb on here, and we get increased armor and overall armor, even though it's a low roll. Now, again, I want to show you one of the mistakes I think people make, and that's really combining 2 rares. So if you have 2 really good rares, what you want to do is roll those separately with other magic items. So obviously, if you get a good rare and you find it out in the wild, or you build it, right, or you craft it, right, and it's like this, you don't want to combine it with another rare that's like this and also a beast of an item, because you can potentially lose both items in one go. What you want to do is recombinate one of your good rares with one of your good only real magic items that has a modifier specifically that you need. And again, keep in mind, you can target these modifiers, meaning we can build specific pieces a lot easier. Ideally, what you can do, this is the safest bet, instead of wasting a bunch of currency, take a base level white item and then actually target it with the specific affix you need. So for instance, if you need a melee physical modifier, in that case, what you should do is, if you have a piece that has it, you can obviously just transfer it. Again, that means you can upgrade a base item with something like the Greater Essence of Enhancement to get a defensive modifier on it, or the Fire modifier with Greater Essence of Flames. That way you can target and add those specific modifiers to your common or magic pieces to get the modifier you want easier if you don't have it rolled on something already. But if we select Intelligence here and Lightning Resistance, and we actually go to recombine this, you can see it failed in this case and we lost both items, which again is just one of the risks. That's why you don't want to throw 2 really good items in here, because you can basically screw them up and lose them both. You can lose a lot of currency doing this, so ideally it might be best to just use Chaos Orbs on your gear to get them where you need to be. But again, recombining them can give you solid bases for items. And with the current market price of the Order artifacts, you can get about 20 of them for a recombination for about 3 exalts. So it could be worth it if you find the right pieces. Now, when it comes to fracturing orbs, this is one of the cooler new things that they've implemented, but they're a little bit rarer to find. Once you find your corrupted nexus areas, or the areas with red corruption, and you clear the middle nexus, you'll end up with something like this, where an area has been cleansed. Essentially, there's a chance that a unique boss can spawn in these and drop fractured orbs. Now, if you drop a fractured orb, or you just simply buy one, this can be used on a piece with at least 4 modifiers on it. So ideally, if it has 5 or 6, you can still use this, but you really want to aim for 4 modifiers on a piece. That way you have a chance to actually lock in. For instance, if this was our chest plate, and our make or break piece for having this setup is our maximum life, because it's like close to like a max roll. Obviously, if we have 4 affixes on here versus 5, we have a 25% chance versus a 20% chance of actually securing that affix when using the fracturing orb. So again, we're going to use this as a fracture. We'll see which one we get, and we're able to get fire resistance on this piece. Obviously, we wanted max life, but that's okay. We didn't get it. So now what we can do is come in here with our exalted orb and roll this one more time. And now we get lightning resistance too. So this is actually a pretty decent starter piece. It doesn't have as much armor as we want. But again, if you have a roll you don't want, where it comes in handy that you lock this in place, is now we can use our chaos orbs to essentially continue to re-roll this piece until we get stuff that we want. So we can continue to roll this to hopefully roll off some of this stuff that isn't good, like the low increased armor roll. So if we were to roll this, and I didn't realize I didn't actually put a 6th orb on here. So we're going to put a 6th orb on here, and now we have plus 49 to spirit. So not only do we have 200 max life, but we basically have 50 bonus spirit, 20 strength, 20 lightning resistance, 30 fire resistance. Even though we don't have tons of armor on this thing, it's still a pretty beefy starter chest. I mean, look, even just looking, it might not go for 3 divines. Again, our fire resistance will stay locked in place permanently. And you can see what these can be placed into. For instance, if you put this in a scepter, allies in your presence deal 30% increased damage, but you can see each one of these have specific armor callouts. For instance, your boots, you can get 20% increased presence area of effect. So that means something like your Resolve's Blood that gives you fire exposure when you're in the presence of an enemy can increase that if you put that on your boots. Again, these are dropped from the Asmiri Wisps that you can actually spec into on your Atlas skill tree down here that gives you higher % chances for your maps to contain Asmiri Wisps. Now for the basics, and quick tip, if you're not used to this already, especially if you're on PC, you can right click and hold shift and actually use orbs to upgrade multiple things at once. Again, if you hold shift, you can actually click on multiple things and upgrade things all at once instead of doing it individually. But again, for the basics, the ideal rule is our transmutation and augmentation orbs are very cheap. So when I get a base that I really want or find a base that I really want, I always basically upgrade using both of them. So that way I can see if I get a decent roll. Obviously, if you don't get a decent roll, you can come right in here and disenchant these items to get shards back because you don't need them. Obviously, use your armor scrap and your whetstones to completely upgrade your weapons to the max and your armor as soon as you're able to. Obviously, specifically for our quality, we want to make sure, again, if you're new to the game, that you're specifically getting all of your affixes first. Once you get all your affixes how you want them, then upgrading your quality to the max. And then once you upgrade your quality to the max, then you can corrupt the item if you want. Again, if you corrupt your item before you put the quality on it, you can totally screw up your entire piece. Again, you corrupt it, that's all that it can be. Now, one other thing that I didn't use a lot early that you could definitely be using is making sure you use your essences because they're actually pretty good. And I know a bunch of people that don't really even pay. Again, what an essence would be great for is if you're going to recombinate an item or you just want to get a specific attribute on a piece of gear first. So we could take this essence of enhancement and add 1 defensive modifier to our ornate plate. And boom, right there, we have increased armor and maximum life. Now, obviously, these rolls aren't great, and you'll get much better rolls with the greater essences. But early on, or even on alts or newer characters, you can use these to basically soup up your gear. One other thing also, some people forget that you can do is actually, if you get a bunch of these essences, and at some point you can't really sell these because they become absolutely worthless on the market, is you can take these essences of sorcery that we're never going to need with this character, reforge them, and actually get a brand new essence out of it. So if you have a bunch of essences you don't need, you can reforge them into essences that you do need. It's a random roll, but you can still do that. Keep in mind, you still have catalysts. So if you run breach maps, those breach maps will essentially drop you different catalysts. The catalysts are great, obviously, for upgrading things like your rings and your amulets specifically. So something like Zoph's Blood as an amulet gives you an insane already increase to maximum life. I believe this had like 14% extra to max life. I put life modifiers on it via these flesh catalysts, and by doing that, I was able to bump my max life up to 18%. But what a lot of people do is actually add the attack modifiers or elemental modifiers of your choice from these different catalysts onto your rings. And again, that bumps up your actual attributes themselves. So you can see we have quality to attack modifiers here. So this would be, for instance, the Reaver Catalyst. Again, running breaches, you'll get enough of these. You should use these to upgrade your jewelry by a free 20%. Once you're approaching in-game and maps, make sure you use these. Eventually you get a ton of them and you don't know what to do with them all. It can make your gear a lot more powerful. With Dawn of the Hunt, people are still building out their characters, but it's important that you're using your gem cutters prisms, get obviously on your skill gems. That way you get the bonuses for all of these. Trust me, the bonuses on these skills can sometimes make your skills like almost 100% times more powerful or feel that much better just because of how good the extra quality bonuses are. For instance, Bone Shatter, 20% more attack speed. 20% more attack speed is a lot. You can wait to find these, but you'll be clearing stuff out a lot quicker, to be honest, if you just go ahead and spin the exalts to buy some of these gem cutters prisms now, because in the long run, depending on how much currency you have, if you want to consider buying these, at least buy these for your 2 or 3 primary skills you use all the time. You should 100% spend the currency to max those out like instantly. And the same goes for your Greater and Jeweler's Orbs. If you have currency to spend on them to upgrade your skill gems, to open up those 4th and 5th slots, especially for your main skills that you're primarily using and dealing damage with, because having an extra support gem slot can turn your ability from being all right to like amazing. So it can be a huge difference. So definitely spend the currency. Don't worry about saving it. You should get your skills where you want them and powerful first. Keep in mind, obviously, you have your soul cores. Your soul cores you'll be able to get from the Trial of Chaos. That way you can add these into regular armor slots. That way you can replace, for instance, your runes with your soul cores, and things like the soul core of Jaquani gives you 2% increased max life per one that you put in your armor. So these are also very good options instead of runes. The newer things are talismans. So you can get different talismans like the bear talisman or the primate talisman. Again, you should make sure you're instilling your amulet even early on, as soon as you're able to basically get your hands on some delirium, because it can give you some pretty amazing passive effects. It really allows you to get some major keystones that you can actually use to, again, allocate or instill your amulet with, like Blurred Motion. For instance, Blurred Motion makes our amulet way better. We get extra increased attack speed, accuracy rating, and dexterity. 5% increased dex is a lot, and 5% increased attack speed is a lot. And literally all we had to do to get that was just use a little bit of delirium. And you shouldn't worry about saving all of it up, because it all go to waste if you never ever use it. So simply right click on your delirium and make sure even early you're distilling your amulets. Keep in mind, you can distill your amulet and then redistill it with another effect if you want to change it later. So locking in and allocating something here doesn't mean you're stuck with it forever. So you should do it, get a big power boost, and then reallocate later. I spent a lot of time worrying what I need to pick because I didn't want to pick the wrong option and choose something later, but you can reinstill these completely fine as long as you don't corrupt this amulet. If you corrupt the amulet, it's over. That's basically it is what it is. So if you're going to corrupt it, also make sure you instill something before you do that, because otherwise then you can't. So keep in mind, something else new that you can get that is still really rare, but still pretty amazing, is these essences, or these essentially corrupted essences. There are 4 types of these that you really need to know about in case you run into them, and that's the Essence of Hysteria. This upgrades a magic item with an item rarity modifier, which can be used on rings, amulets, or helmets. So you can use one of these to essentially add rarity specifically to your gear if it's a magic item. The Essence of Delirium lets you actually add a random notable passive as a modifier. It can only be used on body armor, but it can be extremely powerful. This means notables that are on like your passive tree, you can add on here as key passives and can give you some pretty insane bonuses. Something like the Essence of Horror can actually upgrade a normal item to magic or a magic item to rare with 1 guaranteed property. And that is 100% increased effect of socketed runes and soul cores. So this can be like really powerful. Keep in mind, it costs 85 exalts right now. This can be super great because imagine you have something like this with 3 individual spots in it. You now get 100% increases to all of these runes or soul cores that's in this piece. So if you were to replace one small affix that you have with that, if you were able to roll it on something pretty easily, could be very powerful. And then finally, the Essence of Insanity. This is going to make it so that on corruption, an item gains 2 enchantments. You can only use it on belts, but this means you can basically guarantee that this item gets 2 enchantments from it, and you could build a really great belt this way. Keep in mind, you also want to use this Glass Blower's Bubble to actually upgrade a solid flask, meaning you can buy a great flask off of the marketplace, something that gives you a ton of increased health. Believe me, having the right modifiers and the right life flask can help you tremendously towards the end game, because healing 2300 health compared to healing 1600 health can be a huge difference, especially with things like increased charges or charges recovered per second. It means you're constantly refilling your life flask. And keep in mind, you can upgrade the quality of this to 20% with these as you get them. So make sure you're doing that. Make sure you get a really good life flask and do that as well. That's going to greatly help you out towards the end game. Keep in mind, you can put 3 of the exact same item in the Reforging bench if you don't like any of the rolls that these currently have on them, although they do have to be the same rarity for you to be able to reforge them into a new item. But you can definitely do that. You'll get a brand new roll on it. You can identify it, and then it'll give you a 4th chance. So if you're specifically working with a certain base of item, if all 3 of those are horrible, instead of throwing them away, you can reforge them to get a 4th chance at getting good rolls on gear this way, and it can hopefully get you at least 1 good roll every once in a while. And obviously, especially if you're new to the new league or just playing in general, you should make sure that whether you have quality, you should make sure that you're picking up items pretty consistently with quality or sockets on them, because weapons with quality, when you salvage them, are going to give you either Blacksmith Whetstone or Arcanist Etcher, depending on what kind of weapon you're recycling. Recycling armor with quality on it is going to give you armor scrap, and recycling things with sockets will give you these artificer shards, so that way you can turn those into orbs and actually put sockets on your gear. So early on, especially if you don't have a lot of those, you should make sure you're picking those up pretty consistently. Again, if you're crafting a base piece, you really want to see if it has 2 good rolls on it before you proceed with a Regal Orb. Now, if this has 2 great rolls on it, or maybe it just has 1 really good roll like the 26 strength, then we could say we're going to use a Regal Orb, send this thing over to a rare item. Now we have 15% chaos resistance. That's another great roll. Then we can say, you know what, we have 2 good rolls out of 3 here. We can start using our Exalted Orbs. One thing to keep in mind here, if we look at this and we hit Alt, we actually have prefixes and suffixes on our gear. Each gear piece can have 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes, which means if we decide to Exalt Orb this gear to upgrade it to the next level and add an affix, we basically have a certain % chance to add a prefix or a certain % chance to add a suffix. And again, there's only specific things that you can roll when rolling for a prefix, and only specific things you can roll for when rolling for a suffix. For instance, strength is a suffix. If we get 3 suffixes on this gear, we can't then roll strength as a prefix. It doesn't exist as a prefix. So that's something to keep in mind, so you kind of get a hang of which ones are suffixes and prefixes, because you could be rolling for something trying to get it that will never come, or you'll never be able to roll. So you can get an Exalted Orb and throw this on here. And you can see now we have 2 prefixes and 2 suffixes. If we were to use another Exalt here, now we have multiple prefixes and 2 suffixes. Again, the reason for this is because some prefixes actually have 2 modifiers, so it makes it look like there's more than it is, but we have max prefixes. Now we can only roll 1 more suffix with 1 more Exalted Orb. So something else that's a suffix we would be able to roll, but things like armor that belong in the prefix category, we can no longer get. So at this point, if this gear is trash, you probably shouldn't even roll it this far. But if you're really like, this doesn't have potential and you don't want to waste the Exalt on the 6th roll, because of the way the suffixes are, by all means, save your currency, because the only thing you could do at that point would be grab a Chaos Orb, throw it on here, and randomly take off a modifier to re-roll it and hope you get something better. Keep in mind, Val Orbs can actually send all of your gear to 0 or give you a bonus. It's one or the other. It can destroy your gear. Let me tell you, it can destroy your gear. So if you're using a main like chest piece or a main weapon that costs a lot of currency and you don't have a backup to use really, don't corrupt it. Like you can, but make sure you have like some sort of backup weapon that you can use, maybe the one that you replaced it with. Because if you corrupt this and it goes to 0 and you no longer have a weapon or any currency, you're starting from scratch and you're gonna have a really bad time. I'm just straight up honest. So keep that in mind. In Dawn of the Hunt, those are all the basics of pretty much everything crafting in Path of Exile 2. Understanding this stuff will make the game a lot easier for you, I promise. Guys, make sure to subscribe if you're new, drop a like on the video if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.